Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Members of council, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? See none. So then we'll move right on to the approval of the council minutes. First of all, looking for a mover and seconder to receive or accept the minutes of the special council meeting held July 19th. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Same thing for the minutes of the special closed meeting held July 19th. From mover and seconder, Councillor Wilkinson and Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. And finally, the last set of minutes of the council meeting held August 28th. Councillor Jacobs and the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Business arising out of the minutes. Deputy Mayor.
I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing this the correct way, but I reread the minutes of the special meeting, and I reread the part where you, Mr. Mayor, commented that the atmosphere is created that then will attract more businesses to the municipality and to the uptown core. And you encouraged council to walk around other municipalities to review the investment in the infrastructure and so on. Anyway, so I did that. I've done that since probably about that time, and there's a couple things that I'd like us to. I would like actually administration, and I don't want to be the one giving direction, but I would entertain comments. This summer in particular, I thought we had a tremendous weed problem on the sidewalks of our uptown core. I walk the marina every day, and you know I'm not against the marina, but the weeds were always either sprayed with vinegar or they were pulled. Not the case in the uptown. And you said, you know, what makes people want to invest? Well, it's like your house. If you go to sell your house and you haven't bothered painting and you haven't bothered pulling the weeds, people may overlook your house. Where the house that's kept up and tidy, people will sooner go to that house or want to purchase it. So I'm looking when Mr. Sharon, I believe, looks at budget time, if he could do two things I would like to see, just so that we have a dollar value attached to it. One is designating one person for maintenance in the uptown. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week, even 2 days a week, to keep those weeds pulled or sprayed or something so that it doesn't look unkempt. And I looked again tonight. A lot of times, yes, it's between the sidewalk and the buildings, but it's still our sidewalk. And we have lots of people who are not maintaining outside their building, but I feel that if we do, at least it's the first step. So I would like to see the dollar value attached to having one person do the maintenance, if that's possible, of the uptown in the months, say from April till October, when you've got weeds and debris and so on. And then further to that, and I know this has been put forward at budget times back in the days of Cam McKay, I wanted way back in probably 2008 a sidewalk washer. Again, it's about neat and tidy. It's probably, these may not be the cheapest things we can do, but I think we see a lot of aesthetic value for the money. So if that's possible, if we could see that, since we're already getting the dates for our budget, so if that's possible, like I said, I don't want to be so forward as to say, well, this is what you need to do, but tell me what the procedure is. Those are two things that I took to heart when you said that we should look in other municipalities. And this weekend, I was in Amherstburg for one function. I drove through Kingsville. It doesn't seem to be a problem in those. Granted, they're much smaller cores. We have a bigger urban core, but I think we need to do that. I think it's fairly simple. There will be dollar value attached. But we also have, in the mornings when I'm walking the promenade, we also have 4 people down there maintaining gardens. Granted, again, it's a bigger scale. It's not apples to apples. But still, I think if we're going to do it down there, we need to do it up here.
I think, if I can, I think our comments were heard quite well by administration during that open session is we've had a few other discussions in regard to the weed situation in the uptown. And it's funny that you bring it up, because everywhere that Benny and I have gone recently, including Kingsville and other towns in our area, we can't help but notice, I mean, it's almost getting be just a little joke between the two of us, and look at the weeds, you know, and they're in their sidewalks in the uptown cores too. I know, I'm not saying you didn't, but, or did, but it's funny that wherever we've gone, and I can't help but wonder if it's because everybody is trying to move away from the one reasonable way of getting rid of them, which is using Roundup, right? Which we're supposedly not supposed to use anymore, because vinegar and water certainly isn't doing the trick. But I agree with you, and I feel very confident that administration heard those comments loud and clear. The sidewalk washing machine or cleaning machine, I know we looked at it once before and we were flabbergasted at the cost of something like that, when in reality it would be so easy if the merchants would just go out there and do their own, you know, with a hose and away you go, like we always used to do. But maybe we're in those day and age when it's just not going to happen anymore. But my question to you on that would be, would you then say, okay, the cost of that one individual being assigned to the Uptown Core and this machine for the Uptown Core, would that then be included in the business taxes as in the Uptown Core, because it's not going to service anybody else in the community?
I think that would be part of the discussion at budget time.
Okay.
And those are comments I've heard from the store owners as well. So to me, then you have to buy into it, right?
Yep,
If you're
yep.
going to complain, then you have to buy into it.
Good.
And I don't think there would be a problem with that. I really don't. And I think then it would be up to the two representatives on the BIA, and one's not here tonight, but it would be up to us to sell it. And I would be more than willing to do that.
Okay, good. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to the Deputy Mayor, we will look at bringing a dollar value for an extra person in maintenance. I can tell you we've already begun the search and costing out of a sidewalk washer in order to remove gum. And interestingly enough, it appears that that machine has also evolved over the last few years to include other options, which may help us in the Uptown Core. So we're already looking at that, and we'll consider that during budget time as well.
Thank you.
No other comments? Business rising out of the minutes? Everybody's good? Okay, we'll move on to public meetings. The first one being one in regard to a bylaw amendment, and Heather is taking us through this.
Your Worship, if I may.
Sorry.
On this, I've never seen the acronym EP before. Could you explain that prior to getting into this report?
Heather, are you okay explaining the EP?
Sorry, Your Worship,
Zoning?
EP?
Yeah, zoning.
Environmental protection.
Okay, where I was confused, it's changing it from an A3 to A1 to EP. And I guess that's where my confusion is.
Yeah. So the land designation is environmental protection. In other words, these people will never be allowed to cut down the trees and change the natural habitat there, right?
Yes, Your Worship. Right now, the property is in a managed forest program with the Conservation Authority. So the applicants want to preserve this area. It is their request to preserve it. So environmental protection is one of the zoning categories that we can use in order to do so. The existing house that is there is allowed to be retained. It just so happens that we have, on the area that is being requested for the environmental protection zoning, it's a split zoning. So we have the general agricultural A1 as well as the agricultural hobby farm, which is the A3. So that section will go from A1 and A3 to the new environmental protection EP category.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I'll start at the beginning. Mr. and Mrs. Gorn have applied for a surplus dwelling severance and the rezoning that goes along with this process for their properties at 2100 and 2110 Mercia Road 6. Right now, the property at 2110, which is the lot proposed to be severed, has approximately 4.85 hectares or 12 acres in area, and about 137 meters, which is about 450 feet of frontage on Mercia Road 6. The property is designated both properties are designated agricultural in the official plan, and the property that's being severed, again being 2110 Mercia Road 6, is agricultural hobby farm, or A3 in our zoning bylaw. Right now, that particular property has an existing dwelling, and it also has a woodlot located on it. The property at 2100, which is immediately next west, has a single detached dwelling, as well as a woodlot and a natural heritage area that is being reforested. Both of these pieces of property are owned by the applicants, and as I mentioned, the property is within IRCA's managed forest program. The applicants are proposing to sever a triangular piece of property that has an area of approximately 0.24 hectares, which is 0.6 acres, and that again is 2110 Mercia Road 6. The triangular area would be basically the area of the property that is not occupied by the natural heritage features on the site. The retained piece of property would then be joined with the property next west at 2100 Mercia Road 6. The provincial policy statement has a number of policies that we have to take into consideration when we're reviewing applications for consent. I'm of the opinion that this request conforms or is consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement, and it also conforms with those policies in both the county official plan and the town's official plan in regard to consents. The surplus dwelling severance will not result in the removal of any used agricultural lands, prime agricultural lands. Right now, the severed lot is currently grassed and has the house located on it. No new additional lots are actually going to be created as a result of these applications. Normally, with a surplus dwelling lot, we're creating an additional lot in addition to the retained parcel, so we'd end up with two. But in this case, the applicants are going to join the retained parcel with the property next west that they own. So really, we're starting with two lots and we're going to end with two lots. As we discussed already, in terms of the rezoning, the smaller of the two properties, which is the one at 2110, is zoned agricultural hobby farm, which is A3, and the Goran's other lot at 2100 is zoned general agricultural, which is A1. So we'll rezone the surplus dwelling lot, which is the triangular lot that's being severed, to the A5 category, which is agricultural residential, and then all of the rest of the property is proposed to be rezoned to environmental protection in order to ensure that the woodlot and the rest of the natural heritage features on the property are going to be preserved. There are a number of conditions that are in Schedule A to my report that most of them are standard conditions that we request at any time there's a consent application. In this situation, there are actually three that I'd like to bring attention to. When we received the comments back from the engineering department, the proof of drainage request, which is a standard condition, raised some issues that they wanted to bring to the attention of the applicants. So the applicants have actually met with Luann today, and so far, based on all the information, it looks like a mutual drain agreement is going to end up being required. That's something that can be done without council's involvement, but I'm glad to see that they were able to meet with Luann today. They just wanted to make sure that the applicants were aware that there could be some issues in making sure that the surplus dwelling lot is draining separately to the remainder of the property, because the drain at the front is not a municipal drain. The other two things I'd like to raise, the water connection fee, or water connection fee condition, And also the parkland dedication fee condition are standard conditions when you're creating a new lot because there's an additional demand. But in this situation, really, those two conditions really shouldn't be included, and it's my fault for including them, but I really think after talking to the applicants, we shouldn't be requiring them at this time because we're starting with 2 lots, we're ending with 2 lots, we're not putting an additional demand on any of our services. The parkland dedication fee we use when you have additional demand, like another family moving in or another lot being created. Same with the water connection. We don't need another water connection because there are 2 already and there are 2 lots. Planning's of the opinion that what's being requested is good planning, and we're in support.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, questions? Deputy Mayor?
Just to clarify, Heather, so there are two lots. Now, I guess where I got mixed up was the original homestead there, if you will. That's all part of 2100. That's not a separate part because you're saying that's to be rezoned, that little portion. I guess I'm not getting that. Why?
Through you, Your Worship, I apologize. I just see on the map on page 2 of my report there is an error. Are you referring to the triangular piece or the other piece?
The other piece, like what I would call the homestead farm.
And that should not be hatched. It says on that map that it's rezoned from A1 to A5. When we did the public notice, that was what we were thinking we would do. But since then, we are happy that the environmental protection zoning can actually allow for that house to remain as a permitted use, so we don't have to worry about the A5 for the 2100.
Councillor Jacobs?
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship, with a comment.
Well, it's a public meeting,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
if you can...
I apologize then.
Yep, but I'll come back to you for that motion. I have a question, and I'm trying to figure whether I should preface it first or just say it and then explain why I'm asking. So I think I'll do the latter, or switching to EP, is there a tax implication to the municipality or to the landowner?
Your Worship, I don't know the answer to that question.
Would finance have that? And the reason I ask is I've often thought about my property. I pay residential taxes on a portion of, and then agricultural taxes on the other portion. I always thought that if I ever had the fortitude to do, I'm assuming you're the Gorans, yes? Okay. If I had the fortitude to do to plant trees in my entire property, I would hope that I would be getting credit for doing that from someone, not necessarily the municipality, but maybe the province. So and maybe through the Conservation Authority, and so I'm just throwing that out there for discussion.
Your Worship, I do know that with the managed forest program with IRCA, there is a tax benefit to that program.
Yeah, it's minimal. Extremely. But anyway, I just threw it out there to see if anybody knew that question. I don't know if in the future, if somebody can come back, finance can come back with it, that's fine for me. So, Mr. Neufeld?
There are tax implications. First with the managed forest, yeah, there are some tax implications, but the problem is that the process to go through that is actually quite onerous. And so people with woodlots don't generally don't want to go through that. Environmental protection designation generally means that you're not going to be able to do anything with the property without the authority of the conservation area, conservation group, authority, and so people shy away from that as well. For the most part, people who are maintaining these woodlots, they don't do that for the purposes of tax breaks. But it is something that administration has been talking about from time to time, that perhaps the municipality itself would like to take that step and start recognizing people who are maintaining their woodlots, and even though it may negatively affect revenue to the municipality, the incremental decrease would be likely insignificant, while we are then in support of the people who are trying to bring these environmental characters to our lands that used to be, you know, when Colonel Talbot walked through here, I think they were pretty much 100% treed, and now I think we're down to 7 or 8% across Essex County. So even if it isn't a taxable benefit, perhaps it's something that administration should bring to council for suggestions of providing an incentive for people to keep their woodlots and or plant their woodlots.
Yep. Okay, my point. So it is a public meeting. Is there anyone here that needs to address council or wants to? And if not, then I will go back to Councillor Jacobs moving the recommendation, supported by Councillor Hammond. And I would just, Councillor? Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that in light of what you two gentlemen just spoke about, but I want to congratulate the Gorns on the fact that they're working with IRCA in the conservation area, and it's great, and I think that's fantastic on your behalf. Thank you.
See, I let somebody else speak first, and I never get to talk anymore. So anyway, that's what I was going to say too. Thank you very much for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it, and I think future generations will appreciate it as well. So good for you. All in favor of the motion then? And motion carries. Thank you. Move on to the next item, which is reports of staff and delegation. The first one we're recording the VoIP purchase and upgrade, and David.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This report to purchase a new VoIP system and upgrade part of the current system. Our system is 6 years old, and the support from the vendor has stopped, and so although it's working, it's prudent for us to do this upgrade. So we issued an RFP that closed August 22nd. We invited 4 companies, and then we opened it up to everybody else. So we did get 4 bids. We assessed and rated the proposals on hardware and software and the functionality and capability of the system and equipment that was quoted. We selected the solution from Applied Computer Solutions, and subject to acceptance, we want to move forward with that implementation. Part of the existing system we can reutilize into this new system here, and we will use every piece of equipment that we can. But the rest of the equipment that's no longer under support, we're going to have to dispose of. Now, we're recommending to see about donating it to schools or nonprofits, if that's possible. If that isn't possible, we're going to just recycle the equipment. So we will investigate that on the back end, and then see whichever way we can go about doing that. The capital budget for this project was $65,000. As the cost came in a little bit more, we're going to fund from the IT reserve that we have set. So the additional $10,000 plus will go out of the IT reserve. So it's recommended that council authorize the purchase of the new VoIP system from Applied Computer Solutions in the amount of $74,000, and that council authorize the amount exceeding the approved budget to be funded by IT reserve, and that the disposal of the existing equipment be at the discretion of the CAO.
Okay, David, for the listening audience and those of us who don't remember what VoIP stands for,
Oh,
can you
sorry.
give a brief description of what it is? And yeah, I do, but
Yeah, sorry about that.
refreshers are good.
So VoIP is voice over IP, and so it's a digital phone system that will give us increased functionality to communicate between our facilities and utilize different services from telecoms, such as, rather than hardwired phone lines, we can use internet services to get phone lines to communicate to, for the public to communicate to us and for us to communicate internally and whatnot.
Okay, thank you very much. Discussion moved by, or no, question? Yep.
Well, I'll move with a comment, with your worship.
Sure, so we have a motion. I need a second, seconded by the deputy mayor.
Okay, thank you. Dave, in reading through this today, I thought about the, maybe you can approach the fire department. I know that they're providing more and more online courses there. I think they've got 2 computers now that they use, but I'm sure they could use more if it's something that would be compatible with their system or what they have right now.
Well, with respect to the computers and the hardware part, I think that's going to be separate of this project, but I think I've had discussions with the fire department about that, and part of what will happen next year when we go to replace our current desktop and laptop infrastructure, we will have significant additional computer resources to be put into that training room because their needs have expanded beyond or have grown a lot more than we had anticipated. So I think that's for, excuse me, early 2018.
Councillor Jacobs?
I thank you, Worship. My concern is regarding the 3 options that you had suggested for disposal. And the only concern I has, and you did say that at the discretion of the CAO, and that's one that I would recommend on this move. I don't know if that's included, or do we have to specify that, Your Worship? Because my concern is if we look at the first 2 options, and especially number 2, where the public agencies on a first-come, first-served basis is who gets what and so forth. So I think it would create a lot of confusion. I would just rather see that the discretion of the CAO for the removal of that surplus equipment.
Dave?
I think those are the options we've looked at in the past with existing equipment. So I outlaid what we've done previously in the past. Right underneath that, the recommendation that we would like to go to is either donation to charities or schools or disposal if we can't do a donation. I don't want to make it as first come, first serve. Sorry, it might have been a little confusing when I wrote this report. Those are usually the options that we look at, those 3 options, and we've done that for different equipment in the past. For this kind of specialized equipment, what I would suggest is if a nonprofit or school will take it, we will wipe existing configurations and information in it and then provide it to them, and if not, we would strip it down and send it in for recycling.
And that's, if I may, Your Worship, that's where my thoughts were on this, simply because if you give it to a school or public agencies, who's to say what school could have what? And I think it would create, you know, and then even that's why I would just rather see the CAO take care of it. If someone approaches him in respect to that, then we could deal with it at that aspect of it. Thank you, Worship.
Okay. So is that considered a friendly amendment or just direction to? Just direction? Okay. It's in, yeah. Yeah, okay. Can't remember, did we have a motion on that? So moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Next item is a report regarding the purchase of security cameras on the municipal building. David?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This report is to replace the existing system for this facility over here. The camera system was installed when this building was built, so it's a little over 6 years old right now. And there's been significant upgrades and enhancements to this technology since this existing system was put in. So that plus there's some equipment that has failed within this is the driving force to upgrade this system. So we're recommending that we do a single source of this equipment. And the reason behind that was in September, well, 2 years ago when we replaced the system at our recreation complex, we did a full RFP at that point and looked at different systems and different capabilities and whatnot. And when we settled on the system there, the intent was we would mimic a similar system from that company in this building. So that was our recommendation to just single source at this point because we went through the RFP 2 years ago. So we received a quote from Security One for the cameras. The quote for the back-end server or the main DVR, which is a digital video recorder, because it's just it's a glorified computer. We went to our regular vendor for that kind of hardware, so we got a separate quote for them. So in total, it's about 24,000 or so. The existing equipment that's throughout the building, we will salvage what we can salvage. Some of it, and there's not much of it, we will put into other areas, lower traffic areas, or not, where we don't need the quality that we're going to get with the current system. So we'll use whatever we have there, and the remainder of the equipment will be set for recycling because it's no longer functional. We did not have a budget set aside for this project in capital this year, so we're recommending that this be funded by the IT reserve, well, the full value in IT reserve. So the recommendation is, or we're asking council to authorize the purchase of the camera system from Security One, and we're requesting authorization to be funded solely through the IT reserve, and that the disposal of equipment, again, be at the discretion of the CAO.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions, if I may, and I'm not questioning your integrity, Dave, by any means, but trust me. I guess I'm looking at, though, you're looking at basically like a camera system, correct, on this?
Yeah, specific cameras that that will be spread across the facility, and all the data gets sent back to a central server that records it and maintains it for a specified period of time.
Okay, and I guess the problem that it's not a problem, but I guess my concern would be the fact that you want to single source this out without going for any RFPs in respect to this, and I guess that's my question. You say for the compatibility currently, I read in the report, I guess, that you're looking at, is there that much difference in the different camera systems that are out there that wouldn't integrate into your recording system?
Part of it's integration, and part of it is consistency on the management side for staff to look at it. So when we when we did do this RFP previously, right, 2 years ago, we took into account, of course, price, functionality, and all that. And so when we settled on that system from proposed by Security One at the time, there was multiple reasons why we had selected that. And just for strictly mainly for consistency and ease of use, and it becomes problematic when you have multiple different types of equipment, types of software managing on this. This will integrate quite easily with, again, what we have there. We can have one central location to monitor both facilities. I have staff that can easily, I can deploy the software for them so that they can reference it. When we looked at that, rather than learning a new system, turning around and having teaching staff a new system, we felt it made sense just to be consistent across the board, trying to keep everything all in one umbrella, similar to what we do with VATM and other software packages here. There's other little modules, but it's all contained in the main central software. It's just easier for deployment, easier for use, and we're not retraining various different staff to look at it. That was the whole rationale behind single sourcing.
And regarding your expertise in that area, because it's way above my head, all this IT stuff, but you're comfortable with the pricing that you did get, then you feel it's quite comparable to if you went to RFP or whatever?
Yeah, so in other discussions, to keep, to ensure that it was a fair price being received by Security One, we did contact another vendor just and had a high-level discussion with them. In fact, the discussions with Security One were always that that there was other people quoting. It was never told to them that it would be a single source. To keep everybody honest, and I do believe the price is more than fair, because in some of the research that we've done, the price is comparable to, it's actually cheaper than what we did, equipment for equipment, than what we paid at the rec center 2 years ago. But that's natural because it's over a couple years. Prices typically drop, but I'm happy with the price. I think it's fair and it's reasonable. Yeah, I don't know what else I can tell you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do applaud you. I mean, you've done a lot of changes in the past weeks, even though I couldn't get email all weekend, but that's fine. But but no, it's great, Dave. You're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And just further to that, Mr. Neufeld has...
Moving to one system across the corporation was in part part of my direction to the IT department, because I understand your concern, but 2 years from now, when we're going through this again, maybe at the rec center, now we're back again looking for another system, and whether it's compatible or not. In order to keep the consistency, the compatibility, and moving it forward from here in a common manner, this was something that I wanted to see happen, and the pricing, as Dave said, is in keeping with what we would have had anyway.
Okay, Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you, Dave. Given these reports that we're doing with respect to new computers and security cameras, I know we've had some discussions about moving to fiber optics. And I just wondered if we're any closer now to starting to go that way and using some fiber optics in light of the fact that we're switching a lot of our equipment.
We're actually pretty close with this. We just closed a tender last week to put infrastructure in the ground for phase 1 of fiber installation from this facility down to the rec facility. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was from rec to Seacliff Park, the waterfront, and the marina. So we just closed that tender, I think it was Thursday, and so we've got that pricing in there. So yes, we're getting closer. I will be bringing something forward into the 2018 budget for phase 2 infrastructure as well as the fiber part. So it's coming.
Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Next report is one regarding the countywide active transportation project applications. Mr. Fulmer.
Your Worship and members of Council, the report that's in front of you tonight is for applications for the countywide active transportation system for the municipality of Leamington. Per the CWAT's process, for a complete application to the county, we require a declaration of support for the project from Council, as well as a funding commitment by means of a resolution or letter from Municipal Council. We require a functional design study that supports the total project and associated costs, a detailed project schedule to support full completion of the segment, copy of permits and approvals, and a map that shows the segments. The segments that we've submitted for application are Leamington 8, which is the functional design for the design and estimate of pavement markings, signs, and facilities, and updates to the traffic signal legal plans for the installation of bike lanes on Talbot Street West from Albert Street / Fox to the trail by the old LDSS site. It's to do a functional design. The estimated cost is $10,500, which would be shared $4,200 by the County of Essex and $6,300 by the Municipality of Leamington. The next project would be Leamington 9, which is also a functional design for pavement markings, signs, facilities, and updates to traffic signal plans for the installation of bike lanes on Talbot Street East between Victoria and the east limit of the Talbot Street being County Road 34. It's for the preparation of the functional design, it's anticipated that per the Leamington AT plan, the bike lanes will fit within the existing pavement structure. The cost for this functional design would be $10,500, and it would be cost shared $4,200 by the County of Essex and $6,300 by the municipality of Leamington. Leamington 11A application is for the final engineering, contract administration, and construction of the context-sensitive solution along Seacliff Drive West from County Road 20 to 0.6 kilometers easterly. The cost estimate is for the actual construction and engineering and project supervision. In an effort to move the project forward through the approvals process, at the CWATS Committee and County Council, it's proposed that the current application would include the cost of all curb replacement as part of the 60/40 county and municipality cost sharing. The estimated cost of the final engineering and construction for this portion is $567,500. This would be shared $227,000 by the County of Essex and $340,500 by the municipality of Leamington. Leamington 11C is the application for final engineering, contract administration, and construction of the context-sensitive solution on Seacliff Drive West from County Road 20 to Branton Avenue. The same thing there. In an effort to get it through the CWATS Committee and County Council, it's proposed the current application would include the cost of all curb replacement as part of the 60/40 county cost sharing. The estimated cost for the final engineering and construction of this portion is $1.939 million. It would be shared $775,000 by the County of Essex and $1.163 million by the municipality of Leamington. The Leamington 17 application is for a change in facility type along Point Peely Drive from a signed route to a paved shoulder, as well as a functional design for the paved shoulders. The section would be from the Sturgeon Creek Bridge southerly to Mercier Road 12. And the estimated cost for the functional design is $115,000, which would be shared $46,000 by the County of Essex and $69,000 by the municipality of Leamington. We're looking to do the functional design in 2018 and using the estimates from that to make application for construction in 2019 to align with the sewer separation project. Leamington 22 is an application for a change in CWATS facility type from assigned route to bike lanes, as well as a functional design and estimate for pavement markings, signs and updates to traffic signal legal plans for the installation of bike lanes on Seacliff Drive West from Erie Street to Branton Avenue. This would tie into the section immediately to the west, which is the context-sensitive solution. The estimated cost for this functional design is $8,000, which would be shared $3,200 by the County of Essex and $4,800 by the municipality of Leamington. All the above noted projects are within the recognized settlement and built-up areas, and as per the countywide active transportation funding formula, the sharing would be 40% county and 60% municipality. The Leamington 11B section of Seacliff Drive West that falls between Leamington A and 11C is outside the recognized settlement areas and is 100% county funded. Therefore, Leamington is not required to submit an application for this portion. While the County of Essex has still to conclude their environmental assessment of County Road 20, county representatives have communicated that all remaining alternatives that are being considered as part of their EA include the active transportation facility at the back of curb and does not include road widening except for considerations to add left turn lanes at select intersections. As a result, the recommendation is that Leamington proceed with the application for County Road 20, as the risk of preferred alternatives from the EA that would result in planned multi-use paths would become, it appears, minimal.
Good. Okay. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions. First off, between 11A and 11C, you're mentioning that 0.6 kilometers from County Road 31, and then on the other side, 2.1 kilometers westerly. that's 100% county. Could you explain that? Or like, will they be putting in the sidewalks, or is that still ours? Or I got a little confused in that particular area.
When the countywide active transportation study got passed in 2012, the section, that 0.6 kilometer section, wasn't shown as a settlement area. And according to the funding formula, if it's outside the settlement areas, it's 100% county cost on those projects. So it would be up to the county to construct that portion.
Okay, then, so according to your scale here, 11B would be the responsibility of the county then, correct?
Yes, 11B.
And I have one more question, if I may. The 100% cost of curbing, you said you're going to commit to 100%, hopefully that we will get refunded 40%. Is that what you're insinuating? I'm a little bit confused with some of the terminology here.
It is confusing. Mr. Neufeld?
The plan sets out, well, let's deal with the 11B. That's the 0.6 component. When the infrastructure is built, it will all be built contiguous, but the cost of that component will be 100% responsible to the county, because it's not in the built-up area. Right? So it's not in a settlement area. So according to the terms of reference or the agreements, if it's not in a settlement area, it's 100% county when it's on a county road like that. Right? So the municipality of Leamington won't bear any costs in that area. We have our costs between 11A and 11C, where we are going to be required through this application process to pay 60% of the replacement of the curbs. Now, I suspect Council is looking at a paragraph on page 67 of 78 where discussions had occurred between the CAOs of the County of Essex and Leamington. This comes out of what administration, and I believe Council, has felt has been an unfair situation from the beginning, where admittedly by the county that the curbing along County Road 20 is, I think they use the term, between 80 and 100% to its useful life. In other words, we've all seen it, it's dilapidated. The biking facilities cannot be built on the back of those curbs. They just won't hold. The CWATS agreement says where curbing needs to be replaced because we're putting in these biking facilities, this is the model that we have to follow. But we've maintained from the beginning that I don't think anybody turned their mind to the fact that there may be areas where through choice or I don't want to say negligence, but through choice, the county had chosen not to update its infrastructure. And if they wait long enough, then it will fall to the lower tier, the local municipalities, to come to the table, because their answer is, well, we weren't going to replace those curbs, but now that you're forcing us to replace the curbs because you want bike lanes, you have to pay the 60%. So there were long, protracted discussions between me and the county, the retired CAO for the County of Essex, where he and I finally came to an agreement that because this council had said, you know, this is important to us, let's try and figure out a way to get it done. I had proposed that rather than 60% being paid on those curbs by the municipality of Leamington, that we would ask the county to pay 50% of the costs, and we would pay 60% on the other 50%. Right? Apply the model in a fair and equitable, what we believed was a fair and equitable manner. The CAO had given me the assurance that in order to move this forward, that the county would support that. What I didn't realize was, and it is my understanding, that the extra cost that was going to be associated with that by the County of Essex was then transferred, the obligation was then transferred back to the CWATS committee to say, well, Leamington's only going to pay 50%, they're going to pay 60% on 50% of it, the other 50% now has to come out of the CWATS budget. That was not the intention of the agreement. The intention of that agreement was that the County of Essex would use the money that they have in their budget or their reserves to pay for their own infrastructure and not attach that to the CWATS funding. Segue through to the application process, and my understanding is, again, that the CWATS committee has said, well, they were not in favor of using more CWATS money, and subsequently said if Leamington doesn't put forward its application in the manner that John is recommending here tonight, that essentially we abide by the written rules as found within the CWATS agreement, that the application won't be considered. And knowing how important this is to this mayor and council and administration and our community, not to mention our migrant workers who use this road to commute back and forth. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I think maybe it's time that we move forward with the application, and when this comes before county council, perhaps our mayor and deputy mayor will have another opportunity to address the inequities that have been brought about by the written terms. And again, I'll say I don't think anybody turned their mind to a situation where the county's infrastructure was in such a state of disrepair that we wouldn't even be able to do the bike lanes but for the removal of that infrastructure. What this was about was, if our curbs are in fairly decent shape and you want to put in bike lanes, you ought to be paying 60% of the replacement of that infrastructure. And that too is based on the principle of fairness. I have a very hard time finding the same principle being applied in the manner that the county is applying it now, but I'll leave that to council.
I thank you for the explanation. Could you just clarify for me, though? You said with the curbing, which is the infrastructure, and then the bike paths are separate under CWATS. The curbing is infrastructure of the county. And now we don't have to pay 50% of that.
60%.
60% of their curbing.
Yes.
But it's non-existent in some spots. So,
Yes.
I mean, we're going to put a new curbing for it. And I guess that's, and I'm sure it's going to come up. I know Councillor Wilkinson has lost his mind over this as well. But the fact of, like, they're sitting on a war chest of $140-some million, which is, you know, that's county money. That's the residents of the municipality that this money belongs to. And I applaud the mayor and the deputy mayor for doing what they did a couple of weeks ago at county council, and, you know, making them sit up and take notice. I guess you finally got some support in that direction, and which is fantastic. But I still have a hard time with committing to 100%, because they, you know, past history dealing with these people, they can just very easily say, no, we're not going to pay anything now. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I know we need the bike pass. We want the bike pass, you know, and we get calls every day on this thing. But do we have to commit our tax dollars at 100% to repay the infrastructure that we've already paid for?
I would suggest that we are at a point where we need to move forward as recommended by John. The difference is $185,000. Sometimes the priorities have to put us in a position where we just say enough, we will move forward. But I agree, Councillor Jacobs. It would appear to me that at least in this particular case, the residents of the municipality of Leamington have forwarded their tax dollars to the county for the purposes of upgrading, maintaining, and replacing their infrastructure. And now we find ourselves in a position where our municipality residents are having to foot more of that same bill. But in the eyes of the greater good, this thing has been outstanding for many, many years. It has been on the 5-year plan to be done since 2012, as identified in the CWAT's documents. It is now 2017. That's our 5 years. The 5-year plan is about to expire, and we still haven't got it. It's still not done. I would suggest that, as bitter a pill as it is to swallow, that we move forward to allow the application to at least be considered, and then allow the mayor and the deputy mayor and the other mayors and deputy mayors of the local municipalities to deal with the county administration and CWATs. It didn't go without notice. I'm sure that that our mayor at the last meeting, at last council meeting here, had suggested that perhaps it's time for some of those reserves, the $143 million in reserves that you mentioned, that direction be given by county council that the budget for CWATs be increased in order to cover the applications that have been put forward by the local municipalities. It's my understanding that this is the first year where the applications outdo the amount of budget that is at the county level. What that shows is a significant commitment by the local municipalities to getting this kind of biking facilities in place. It seems ironic to me, it even seems disturbing to me, that the local municipalities would have this kind of commitment at each one of their councils, but when we get to the county level, that commitment seems to disappear. So we do have our mayors and our deputy mayors who can go there and say, if all of these if these local municipalities want to see these bike lanes in place, are paying 60 cents on the dollar to replace and or add county infrastructure, how is it that the county, at the county level, there can't be support for significant input and investment in those things that create the quality of life for our residents? That's what this is about. It can't just be about the numbers. I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, if I may, Your Worship, I just have one comment in respect to that. And I hope that maybe now with a new CAO in power, I guess, as well as what our deputy mayor and our mayor did at the last county council meeting, that it seemed to me you garnished support finally from the other mayors within the municipality. And as our CAO says, what a great opportunity now to show that it's not status quo, that we want to move forward in a different direction with the dispersion of those funds. I mean, to sit on $142 million and then come back to us and say, well, you need 40 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, is outrageous. And I want to thank you for what you have done, both of you, the mayor and the deputy mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Peter. That was I read this thing a couple times last night, and yeah, I was thoroughly confused, and that was going to be my question tonight is, what's the possibility, what's the chances that we're going to be hung out on the hook here for 100%? Anyway, that's clear now, thank you. Everybody knows my feelings when it comes to how business is done up at the county level it seems like it's been trending that way for 2-3 years now. And I'm glad to see that the gauntlet was thrown down at the last county council meeting. I hope that the rest of the municipalities out there follow suit and just buck the trend of what the county has been shoving down the throats of the municipalities here for it seems like it's been, I've only been involved in this now for 3 years, but it's really a trend that is hard to swallow some days. Whether it be tourism, whether it be CWATs, whether it be economic development, I don't know. We can go on and on. We've seen it in front of us a few times. Anyway, I like the way you put it, Peter. Let's move on. It is the right thing to do. I think someday this council is going to look back at a few projects. We're going to be proud of the waterfront. Bevel Line, it got controversial, but we're going to be proud of that someday too. We did the right thing there too at the expense. That was a hard pill to swallow as well. This one here is going to be a jewel as well. I'm going to compare it to almost like our waterfront. To have a seamless trail that will go from a safe, seamless trail that's going to go from Leamington to Kingsville is going to be something special that I think everybody's going to enjoy. More importantly, I hate putting dollars over the sakes of lives. It's just a matter of time before a tragic accident happens out there, and I'm amazed it hasn't happened already. Has it? I just don't remember it then. It's going to happen again, and it's the right thing to do. It really is. I hope that we can fight up at the next level to try and claw some of this back. And I appreciate the comments that were made on the final page of this report, where we'll have to realize in the 2018 budget the magnitude of this, us committing to these dollars. I'm glad you pointed that out, and it'll be something we'll have to be very aware of in our 2018 budget discussions, that we committed to this. I hope that we commit to this. Anyway, I think this council, if they approve this tonight, I'm proud to be a part of that council then. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing before I go to Councillor Hammond next, that I don't think there's any way we can be hung out to pay 100% of this. This is the CWAT's agreement, so it'll be the 60-40 split no matter how much of it we get done. And I'll stop there. So, Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. Yes, and my comments too were to agreeing to the commitment to fund 100% of the cost. However, Mr. Newfield, I think, has explained it very well. There are some times that we're put in a position of doing things that we're agreeing to things that we don't want to necessarily agree to, but in the interest of the better good, and I believe that that's what this is, I think this report should go through. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I agree too that we need to commit to the 100% of the curb replacement. Do I have faith that we're going to convince County Council to dig into that reserve? This is in the last 3 years this attitude has been prevalent. This is decades. I would say 30 years. And for our mayor to get almost full approval from County Council, he and I were both shocked. This is bucking a trend that is almost like cement. Do I think we're going to have a heck of a lot of luck? Some of these people are so entrenched in that attitude, into that mentality. Yeah, they'll look at it, but will they waver? New CAO has been the man who's been tying that money bag. So to expect a whole different way of thinking, I'm quietly optimistic. I will support the mayor, but I just don't think that we should count on that happening. But that being said, I think it's worth it. I drove down that the other day, that highway. It's an embarrassment.
Yes, it is.
I saw 3 migrant workers, farm workers, teetering on that edge. I'm hoping to heck I don't hit one. And then there's a young gal riding her bike recreationally on that little worn path. That's ridiculous. They should be ashamed of themselves that they're holding so tight to this money, that they're not willing to negotiate better than this on infrastructure. That's their responsibility. Are we going to convince them different? We have issues like saying to the group of mayors and deputy mayors, you know, we need to all chip in to, say, Kingsville Folk Festival, because it will impact all of us. Do you think that we could pry them from their nickels and their dimes? No. And this is way bigger money. But at the end of the day, I think this is something we need to do. And I'm willing to put on hold some of the other infrastructure we should be doing, because I think that this, on the list of priorities, is at the top. This is for the greater good, and also for our segment of people that come in every year that are vital to our community. I think this is at the top of the list. If we have to pay that money we don't want to pay, it's still something that I think will be better for all of us. Quality of life, whatever you want to call it, I just think it's something that we're going to need to do. And the fact that Kingsville's done what they've done also puts us a bit behind the 8 ball. But anyway, I'm glad that we're putting this to rest for now and moving forward.
If I may, Your Worship, just to comment, I'm more optimistic maybe than you are, because I think that between you and the mayor, you've cracked that shell. I think that's the first time I believe that you got a decision, which was 99.9, just the warden was against it. But you did crack that shell, and you've got maybe the troops' second thinking, and they will get some fortitude and stand up. Thank you. So,
As bad as it sounds, I'm happy all of you are as frustrated as I've been for so long over this. It is. It's irritating as all get out, isn't it? I mean, this is a no-brainer. This is tourism. This is safety, and there have been deaths and serious accidents caused out there in the past, before. And I've raised that at county before, and certainly got certain people red-faced over it in anger at me pointing out the logic of doing this. And I look back at some of the things, and I know I had coaching from a former council member in regard to the landfill when they were redesigning how they were going to charge all of our municipalities. And Leamington took it on the chin again because of the county's decision. Other ones got a free ride, and we paid. I look at County Road 8. Is that Larry's, Councilor Beaky's road? 18, County Road 18. They're repaving it, and all of our understandings at the county level was when you repave the road, you repave the shoulders. That's what we're proceeding forward with. And we had to go and fight. Our administration, again, had to go and fight with county administration just to get a little piece of it done. And when the question was asked at the county, well, that program doesn't come in until the next year. And so when are they coming back to do ours? Well, who knows, right? Too bad, so sad, the timing was off. The other night, there's a report on there that another municipality to the north of Highway 3 needs to have a bridge or a culvert or something fixed or repaired, scheduled for 2019, but magically is moved to this year. So it's those things that just drive me crazy. We're on the wrong side of Highway 3, it seems sometimes. And all of us need to remember that even though Kingsville did that work up there, and even though they had grant money for the first section, the second section, it's theirs. They're paying the 60-40 split. They too are being punished in the same fashion we are from the county level. That's their infrastructure that needs to be replaced, not ours. Anyway, drives us crazy. I am sincerely happy to see this on the table tonight. I know you're all going to support it anyway. My biggest fear is that CWATS is going to go, nah, that would use up our entire budget. We'll give you this much, and we've got to go do pieces here, there, and everywhere. That's what I expect to hear. Now, can the deputy mayor and I wrangle enough support at the county level to say, boys, kick us out some money from those reserves, because we want to all do these projects this year? I don't know. Everybody will be a winner if they're listening, if they're paying attention. They're all going to get something if we all tell admin that's what we want. But that's the fight we're going to really get into. So, got to be done. And I'm glad we're moving ahead. Thank you to John and Rob and Peter, everybody who's been in the trenches fighting on our behalf on this, trying to get this done right. hopefully we do this. Councillor?
Has there been any, I guess, delegations from the municipality and from ours and from other municipalities that are involved with CWATs that want to move forward? I mean, I hate to put it in this respect, but maybe a march on County Hall may have some
There have been
bearing?
presentations in the past, yes, but it's extremely friendly presentations.
Well, maybe they need to get more aggressive.
Well, no,
you
no,
know?
their associations are with the county side of it. So has there been anybody from Leamington, Kingsville area go up there in anger and say, you need to do this now? Not that I'm aware of. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, Scottish temperature coming out, temper coming out. Mr. Neufeld.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that the applications are made to the CWATS committee. The CWATS committee has a model that they are required to follow. So, while it frustrates me that that model doesn't seem to bring equity, we can't really lay the blame at the feet of the CWATS committee. Now, that being said, CWATS committee makes recommendations to county council regarding projects that are going to be accepted and or budgets. It's at that time where county council now can take the reins and say, well, what if there's not enough money to approve all of these? If there was enough money, would you do them all? And how much money is that? And let's take it out of reserves and let's get it done. You know, for this community, not just the municipality of Leamington, but all of the communities within the county of Essex, if you want to make a bold statement about biking facilities and tourism and bike tourism, this is the way to do it, is to say every time that these local municipalities come forward with an application, the county is going to support it because it's 60 cents on the dollar. Look at it as a grant. We're going to get our infrastructure improved in the county, and our local municipalities are going to be able to achieve their strategic planning. And so I think that is one of the strongest arguments that can be made. Things have changed since 2012 when this CWATS organization started. And one of the big things that's changed is tourism. Tourism is now one of the driving forces of economic development in the province of Ontario, and the province itself is focusing on biking and cycling and commuting. This is where the money is. There's money available through our commuter cycling program. Now is the time to make the bold statement that we're not going to follow, we're going to lead, and it gives the county the opportunity to do that.
Councillor?
Thank you. Before I move this, I would have one question. What is the composition of the CWATS committee? Is it strictly admin from the county, or is there other individuals involved?
John, do you want to elaborate?
I can take
okay,
that.
Sure.
It's made up of the county engineer is the chair, and then each one of the municipalities that approved the active transportation master plan for the county each had a representative. Now, I don't know if there are others, John, but I know at least that many.
Yes, there are also IRCAs on the committee, and the neighboring municipalities of Windsor and Chatham-Kent are there, but they do not vote. And the Board of Health has a representative there as well.
Incidentally, John is our very capable representative.
Yep. But okay, moved by Councillor Jacobs, supported by Deputy Mayor. And again, just on a more positive note, I'm sorry that I get frustrated by this, but seeing 8 requests going in, and I know the bulk of them are on County Road 20, but seeing the other ones going in and our looking out, planning for the future, I think is just incredible. This town is very much on top of what we're trying to accomplish, much as Mr. Neufeld has said, and when we are setting the example. And I truly believe that the other county municipalities are starting to see the value in this and the connection between our municipalities for that tourism, for commercial reasons, for social reasons. And I do hope, sincerely hope, that they step up to the plate and do the political thing, do the right thing, and let's get this money flowing in the right direction and get it done. So we'll do our best, won't we? Right? Any further comments on the report? All in favor of the report? And carried. Thank you, John. Next item is a request for a proposal in regard to sidewalk strategy. Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The municipality of Leamington has a vast pedestrian sidewalk network that serves the residents by providing safe space for walking through neighborhoods, to recreation areas, workspaces, and through commercial districts. But there remains a large urban area without sidewalks, and you can see that's depicted in attached Schedule A of my report. The green area is the existing sidewalk network, and the orange area is the areas we'd like to see sidewalks. Wow. So just as a bit of history, prior to the 60s, sidewalks were a necessary component of a town's neighborhoods and uptown commercial areas, but through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, new neighborhoods were developed without sidewalks, providing only the streets, sewers, utilities, potable water to the area residents. Through the last 20 years, the municipality of Leamington changed that way of thinking and has added to the sidewalk network, primarily along our arterial and collector streets. But approximately 55 kilometers of new sidewalk are needed to complete the network, fill in the blanks that were left behind from the 60s and 70s, and serve our new subdivisions. It's important to note that any new subdivisions that we do bring in front of council have sidewalk as part of them, and the cost of the sidewalk is the responsibility of the developers. We've had several discussions about sidewalk at council, but recently we've been challenged with sidewalks, establishing sidewalks in the neighborhoods that were constructed without sidewalks, the relocation of the Leamington District Secondary School, restructuring of the Greater Essex County District School Board, and elementary schools have changed the walking patterns in and around Leamington. So we asked 9 area consultants to provide us with proposals to support the sidewalk component of walkable communities. And the deliverables would include a new sidewalk warrant, sidewalk development manual and criteria, sidewalk priority lists, and an updated sidewalk catalog. So in July this year, we did receive 3 quotations from Baird AE, Dillon Consulting, and R.C. Spencer Associates. Again, council has supported the construction of sidewalks and trails within new developments since the 90s. Administration is recommending the sidewalks and active transportation routes, as described in our active transportation plan, continue to be part of every new construction and reconstruction project. Administration also recommends that Leamington recognize and support the need for walkable communities. And walkable communities acknowledge the need for accommodating consumers, tourists, pedestrians, cyclists, transit, freight, and motor vehicles, reflecting on the guidelines set out in the Ontario Traffic Manual. Accessibility in terms of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, mixed-use environment of urban buildings, public spaces, and landscape that support walking, a multimodal network that include pedestrians, cyclists, transit, and vehicles, and creating relationships between the surrounding land use, character, and the right-of-way. And I just wanted to read something from a report I brought in 2012 that talks about sidewalks and how sidewalks enhance community connectivity, allowing people to walk to shopping areas, schools, doctors' offices, and to other local appointments. Sidewalks improve safety, removing the need for pedestrians to share the road with vehicles, in particular during periods of inclement weather. This is of greatest importance to the most vulnerable, such as children and the elderly. Accessibility is improved with the installation of sidewalks by providing the opportunity for the addition of accessibility features to aid mobility, and by removing interaction with vehicles, except at controlled intersections. Sidewalks promote a healthy lifestyle by enabling a safe pedestrian route throughout our community. And it could even be argued that sidewalks can help attract tourists and increase local business activities through foot traffic. So our proposal, in my report, I included that our proposals were evaluated against the following criteria, and we evaluated the proposal, communication skills of the proponent, project understanding, proposed work program, and their references. We also took a closer look at the project managers they presented and their team and the consulting firm as a whole. Dillon Consulting's proposal yielded the highest score and had the greatest detail and the most identifiable deliverables to benefit the municipality. And it's therefore administration's recommendation that a sidewalk strategy study be awarded to Dillon Consulting. And our budget for the 2017 sidewalk strategy was $20,000, and the Dillon's fees for this work, including net HST, is just over $20,000.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Again, Alan, I'm not challenging your integrity. I have the highest regards for you, but where are the quotes for this? We don't have any quotes. Are you looking at single sourcing, such as we just went through with the IT?
No, we went out through a proposal process, and we wrote a scope of work, and we sent that out to 9 different consultants, and we received proposals back from 3. And then we scored that. Cost was just one of the scoring criteria. There were many other things that I talked about, such as just their ability to communicate their understanding of the proposal and what we needed in Leamington, how they presented themselves, and who they are using on our project.
And if I may, Your Worship, one more. I'm going back to the way we had an issue before with the cutting through driveways. I know it raised a lot of ire among residents and so forth. And I understand that the grade, what's all that we went through before, Alan, with the slopes and the grades and the ups and the downs and around trees or whatever. But is there a way that we can get away without cutting them? I know that before we saved around $25,000 or $30,000 when we did that last project that we discussed thoroughly. Is there a way that we can save them? Because, I don't know, it seems like a waste to me when you come through and rip up a good driveway and then we're putting down, just repouring it again. If it meets grades, that's where I'm going at. I understand if you got a slope of 40 degrees and you're at 30, well, that's understandable.
Those are exactly the things that I want our consultant to present to council. So that's our hope, our intention, that this is a well-reasoned, well-presented discussion and report back to council. Council will even be included in the study of your chance to make your thoughts known to the consultant. And those kinds of things will be shared back to council.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know who can answer this, Alan or Peter, Rob. How much will this master plan hold council's feet to the fire? If once this master plan is developed, can we waver from that at all? And I'm not talking this term of council, I'm talking 3 years down the road. You know, this happened with that traffic master plan kind of thing with the bevel line, stoplight, or not stoplight, the stop sign. You know, and we were told at various points that if we had a professional engineer tell us that one needed to be there, we better not go against him or we will be liable. Will this happen in the case of a sidewalk master plan? Because I'll tell you right now, that makes me go, whoa. I don't want to commit any council to something down the road that they cannot waver from.
I'd like it if things didn't change, if I could get studies that would let me work here and just build things out for the next 20 years, but I recognize that that doesn't happen, and that's why we do revisit the transportation master plans every 5 years. We revisit our bridges every 2 years. We look at our roads every year, and we shuffle things around. The intention would be that we would have a basis to start with and a priority list, and we can revisit that. And those kinds of things can be written into the study so that this will become a basis for us to move forward, not necessarily set in stone.
Okay. Peter?
I think another way of looking at it is that it's not meant to hold council's feet to the fire, but rather in a case where administration and council understand what the philosophy is. The previous administration has been working towards creating a walkable community with an understanding of what that is. There have been a couple of projects that have come forward where council has said, well, no, this isn't one of those areas where we want to add sidewalks. But administration has been working towards the previous direction of creating a walkable community. So when we're looking at the particular roads that are connecting roads within the community, and we know that people who will be walking there aren't just the people who are living within that particular neighborhood, administration was coming with the recommendation to have a walkable community. And we got into some conflict on a couple of projects. What I think this study will help do, and as Alan alluded to, the fact that council will also be included in the discussion, is to try and identify what the philosophy is, so that we're working towards the same goals. Maybe there are connecting roads that need sidewalks, but where the front yard and the driveway is not big enough to have two vehicles parked there without having the sidewalk bisect that parking area, that those will no longer be considered as part of the walkable community philosophy. So it's just to try and bring some clarity so that administration can move forward with confidence that we're bringing to council what council wants to see happen within the community, giving consideration to the safety and the way things were built. Because there were some neighborhoods that were built at times when the developers wanted to give the neighborhood as large backyards as possible, so they moved the houses forward towards the road. Now that has limited the ability for the municipality to come in at a later time and put in sidewalks without disrupting the people who have been living there. We get that, but we being administration, but administration is also trying to bring to council the plans under the philosophy of a walkable community. So maybe it's just helping to define exactly where that walkable community philosophy can be applied and under what circumstances it won't be. I think that's what we're trying to do too.
Deputy Mayor?
But you understand what I'm saying, how the traffic plan, it hemmed us in to a degree. Because that bevel line stop sign, those of us that changed our minds because of the threat, if you will, light threat, that if something happened, we could be liable because it was recommended by a professional engineer, and we were going against, actually would have gone against too. So I'm just saying, is this going to hem any council in, so that if they go against this master plan, no, okay, we heard it here. I'm sure it's recorded. I'm good as long as it's not hemming anybody in. That we still, let's face it, some of these are political pressures, right? We try and use common sense and make it work with the political pressure when we decide on whether or not there should be a sidewalk, right? Whether it's cutting in of the driveways or whatever it is. Council has to take all things into consideration. So I want to be sure that any council has that opportunity to still make a choice when they are pressured by the public. I don't want to be, well, the liability, my almost most hated word, is held up as a little thing. Remember the liability. So I just don't want to get any council into a spot where they cannot move on something like this. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
And I guess the answer in part to that is if we establish the philosophy of what council wants as a walkable community, we won't be bringing things before council that don't match that philosophy. If council changes and the philosophy changes, well, then we'll be back to talking about that again. I think we're trying to bring some clarity to administration and how we're going to apply what it is that council wants.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've tried to remind myself a couple times here, the reason why we're here tonight is just to award the strategy to Dillon Consulting. So maybe my comments would be better, you know, at the time of presentation of whatever strategy they come forward with, and at budget time too, is when we see that money for these sidewalk projects, like Benny was in there, you know, we all approved it in 2017. Benny was written right into 2017. And that's where I'll have more comments then. When I see what comes back from Dillon, if it's written into the 2018 budget, you know, whatever sidewalks we decide to do in 2018, when we look at it on paper, it's, you know, it looks fantastic, you know, it makes sense. Put a sidewalk on Jones Avenue, why not? It's not until we have the public meetings, the public opinion, the people who are affected by it is what really drives a lot of, you know, my decision. You know, how are we affecting the people that are affected by these sidewalks? So I'm hoping that Dillon has a portion in their strategy where it talks about public consultation will play a big role in this as well. I'm looking forward to seeing that in their strategy. As for awardness, I see the value in that. I do. It took me a little bit last night to get over it, but I do see the value of having this this strategy. But I think I'll have more comments as the strategy comes in front of us. And then at 2018 budget, I want to make sure I get out there and really pay attention to what was written into that 2018 budget and kind of look for possible firestorms coming down the road here when we do present that, or sorry, when that neighborhood gets that thrown at them. Those are my comments for now.
Okay. What are council's wishes? Moved by Councillor Hammond, support by Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item is a report regarding the long-term finance agreement with Essex Power Lines Corporation. Ms. Roach?
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Administration has received a request to renew the long-term financing agreement with Essex Power Lines Corporation for another 5-year term. This will potentially be the 4th renewal of the interest-bearing loan that originated back in 2000, while the Ontario Electricity Competition Act required the restructuring of municipal electric utilities. So the terms of the previous agreements are outlined within the report. The current offer to renew includes the same principal, just over $2.1 million, another 5-year term, and an annual interest rate of 3.8%, which is a slight decrease from the 4% interest rate on the current agreement that will expire at the end of this year. That translates to about $20,000. So the agreement does offer the option to draw down the loan through annual repayments and provides the municipality to request repayment of the entire outstanding balance upon written notice. So why should the municipality consider renewing this long-term financing arrangement? So there are 3 points that council may want to contemplate. So the first one is there a current requirement of these funds? Of course, there are many valid uses for these funds. This loan does provide a conservative, low-risk opportunity where the investment is available if the funds are required. So the loan ensures that the funds are invested in a prudent manner that optimizes the return on investment. The second is there a better investment strategy for these funds? The current daily interest rate on the funds in our bank are earning 1.95%. Administration is looking at alternative investment opportunities to offset some of the taxation demand. So this is one way for the municipality to diversify their investment portfolio. The rate being offered by Essex Power Lines is 3.8%, which is slightly above the current prime rate of 3.2%. The current 5-year loan rate through Infrastructure Ontario is 2.44%, given the most recent interest rate increase announcement. At the time of writing the report, it was about 2.2. The third item that we may want to contemplate is what is the impact of terminating the loan? So annually, there's a taxation benefit of interest revenue of about $82,000 per year, or 0.4% of the general taxation property tax levy. So interest rates will continue to be monitored in relation to the returns under this loan agreement if council chooses to renew, to make sure that this rate remains competitive and it is an appropriate investment for the municipality. So the recommendation before council this evening is that the long-term finance agreement be renewed with Essex Power Lines Corporation in the principal sum of $2.1 million at 3.8% for a 5-year term from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2022, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with Essex Power Lines.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Deputy Mayor. Question, too? Yep. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, with the release of our figures, debt versus reserves, I think we might as well just keep on doing what we're doing. We're not in a hard bind kind of position. We might as well keep on making some money and keep going. Good work on all of us.
Good. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, then? Carried. Final report is one regarding election services provider. Ms. Percy?
Earlier this year, Council approved the alternative voting method of internet and phone for the 2018 municipal election. In July, an RFP for an election service provider was issued jointly with the Town of Tecumseh and Town of LaSalle. 3 proposals were received, and a thorough review was done of each proposal. The evaluation committee unanimously agreed to recommend IntelliVote as their election service provider. IntelliVote was chosen due to its experience and expertise in delivering successful elections in similar size and large municipalities, their system capabilities, and additional standard features. IntelliVote is a company that pioneered internet voting in Ontario and has the most internet election experience. They've delivered more Ontario municipal e-voting elections than competitors combined. All the 48 municipalities to which they have provided services in the last election are referenceable clients. IntelliVote will provide on-site training to election staff, candidates, and voting videos to share with the public. In addition, audit and candidate modules are offered included in the price. It's important to ensure that the election is conducted with a company that has extensive experience in this field, and administration is confident that IntelliVote Systems has this experience. The total cost for the service is $45,470, and the quote is based on the number of electors from the 2014 municipal election. So the cost could vary based on the number of voters on this municipal voters list and any variations in Canada Post's charge for first-class mail. Currently, without further adjustments to the budget, there are approximately $80,000 budgeted and available for the 2018 municipal election. So administration is recommending that IntelliVote Systems be awarded the contract for the provision of internet and telephone election services in the amount of $45,470, including HST, and the clerk be authorized to execute the agreement.
Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Does this mean that the CAO won't have to stay up till midnight to get the election results with this firm, or? I'll move it.
Let's hope so. Support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. There were no matters for approval or other matters for consideration and no closed session, so we'll move right into consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 63-17 being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 890-09 for the municipality of Leamington, which pertains to subject lands ZBA 153, 2100 and 2110 Mercia Road 6, and that's from the public meeting earlier. Bylaw 64-17 being a bylaw to amend 4284-95 as amended, being a bylaw for the regulation of traffic and parking in certain areas of municipality of Leamington, and that's from a report from the last council meeting. and bylaw 6517 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held September 11th, 2017.
Questions, comments? Council's wishes. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, support by Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Notice of motion that were none circulated, so we're into open session for council and admin. Mr. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I just wanted to update council that we have finally received a notice back from the Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs regarding our request for additional funding for the Peely Drive sanitary sewer project. During that, the close of the tender, I told council that we were going to do that, to submit a letter to them and request additional funding under the circumstances. Unfortunately, like we anticipated, the response was that there is no more money available under that particular program, though they did refer us to other potential funding sources for the project. So just providing council that update and letting council know we'll continue to monitor the cost of that project and keep council up to date as to where we're at.
Okay. And further to that, I've also done the political side of it, and the same responses were received both federally, provincially. So, sure, to open session. Mr.
Thank you, Your
Councillor
Worship.
Jacobs.
Rob, if I may, I know during some heated discussion that went on that evening in respect to the costing, we still are looking at some type of offsetting those costs within house, like looking at different ways to, I guess, to lessen the burden on the assessments?
I'll have Mr. Neufeld address that.
First and foremost, we started with the funders. We also had indicated to council that if it was council's wish, that we could also look at, as you had called it, in-house solutions. We have not done that yet because we needed to explore the external first, and obviously it will have to be a decision of council of the whole in order to move that forward. But we can have those discussions more certainly when we know what the final costs are going to be. Right, when we get to that, because that's when we have the discussion around the assessments. If there's the committee of assessment, quarter revision, committee of revision, right?
One of the two.
That's when we look at the assessments and the amounts, and by then we'll know what the full price is and whether or not the municipality has a way of softening the blow.
That to me is an acceptable response. I just wanted to ensure that when we get the final numbers in, that we're still looking at maybe easing the pain to some of those individuals there through some type of different initiatives that we could look at. So, thank you.
Nothing else from anyone? No. Real quick then, Wednesday, August 30th, I attended a lengthy meeting actually at the New Canadian Centre of Excellence with the Minister of, she be the Assistant to the Deputy Minister of Immigration in town with some staff, and then a number of local employers and community groups, and we're talking about the whole crux of the matter was the influx of people coming into Quebec and into Manitoba because of what's going on in the U.S. and what we might want to start considering to prepare ourselves, because Windsor, Essex County, Leamington, we're all relatively close to a border crossing. Not similar to the two where the majority are coming across right now, but it was just more or less to get us prepared for those potential issues that we may want to face. That really was the boil down of the whole conversation. But we did touch on the Syrian refugees that have come to Leamington. I think they're at 147. All of them have housing. All of them are, most of them are gainfully employed, and everything is going very, very well for all of them. So it was a good news story from that perspective. Of course, I discussed a whole myriad of other things, as did the employers that were there, but it was really quite an interesting meeting. On Wednesday, September the 6th, gee, if I can read my writing here. Oh, Councillor Verbicki and I attended a luncheon by invitation to listen to Andrea Horvath, the leader of the NDP party, talk about their view on, which kind of made us chuckle. It was always Chatham, Kent, Chatham, Kent. They always forgot to mention it's Chatham, Kent, Leamington. But they talked about the agricultural industry and taxation and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of interesting there as well. Friday, September the 8th, I attended the grand opening of Meteor Systems, who are just off of Seacliff Drive. Totally unaware of their existence and what they do there. I don't know if any of you are aware of of what their manufacturing is there. It was incredible. They're shipping their products North America wide in California. It doesn't matter where they have to go, they go, and they do extrusions and all sorts of the metal hangers, and it's really, really cool. Very impressive, and they had quite a humongous crowd show up for that grand opening. So I thank them for that invitation. And then Friday, September the 8th, same day, the CAO and I were up in Windsor at an Essex Power meeting where we looked at sustainable communities. And it's an interesting, I don't know if I want to call it a theory, but I guess an outlook on what we as Essex Power could do in our 4 ownership municipalities in the way of creating a power generation method to help us reduce, first of all, our individual municipal costs. I forget what they call that after the meter, behind the meter connection, virtual metering, and then eventually expand that whole process into going to the commercial and residential areas. So we ourselves could start bringing hydro costs down. It's going to come with substantial investment, but it was a pretty cool concept as to where we go. And I know they're moving ahead with it because they had to get information in to the provincial government by a very short period of time to be lined up for the funding that will come forward for that. So that's really about it. Other than I think we should all wish Councillor Hammond a happy anniversary, what's left of it, and hopefully he has a happy anniversary. So that's why he snuck out. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Anyway, if nothing else, motion to adjourn. Anybody? Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Jacobs, all in favor? Thank you.